look at this passage. Are you scared of speaking before a large audience or even making suggestions in public? This need not be. You can make effective speeches in public. Here are a few pointers. Perhaps the most important step is to be sure of what you're going to say. This sounds obvious enough, but it is amazing how people get to speak when in fact they have very little to say. After warning consequential points, they discover they have run out of steam. To ensure you can speak well, you must be more conversant with the topic. The more conversant you are, the more confident you will be. How do you present your speech? Certainly, before you begin, you will be a little uneasy. Even the most experienced speaker feels the same way before beginning a speech. This is not bad. In fact, it's a good tonic for a successful speech. To overcome this, do not rush headlong into the task. Rather, it pays to breathe in and out, heavily, deeply, and calmly. Then begin the speech slowly, calmly, carefully, with a clear, confident voice. This is when you are going through the introduction. The chairman, honorable guest of honor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. By the time you finish this and go through the usual ritual of stating that it gives you great pleasure to stand before this august gathering to discuss a few points, you would have reached a point of emotional equilibrium. You should now be sufficiently calm to go on with the speech. Somewhere at the beginning and at the strategic points in your speech, you should introduce flavor into what you are saying. You would not want to serve tea without sugar after all. So you should inject some humorous remarks once in a while. This calls for skill. To start with, you cannot introduce humor indiscriminately. Otherwise, you might sound like a jester. Experienced speakers most often introduce humor early in their speeches, presumably to ease the tension in the hall. These jokes must be brief, purposeful, and related to the point. Many speakers are scared of the countenances of their listeners. Not all their looks are friendly. However, there are bound to be a few friendly ones, and it is advisable to pick them out. Look at them from time to time and ignore the hostile ones. Looking at the friendly faces keeps you at ease. You are advised to write your speech in full, after which you should read it several times before the day. You could get a willing listener to criticize your delivery. Do this several times until you can almost recite it. Notice that we are not advising you to memorize it because you could forget vital areas due to anxiety. Writing out and practicing the speech will make you much familiar with the content, indeed every word. Speech making is an art. While it is true that some are gifted in speech making, it is more correct that anyone who doesn't suffer from speech handicaps can learn to deliver effective speeches. You can become a master in this art. So let's look at the question. Question 1 says, in one sentence, what is the intention of the writer? So in this case, you are expected to use the direct sentence method because it says in one sentence. It's only when you have more than one that you could use a preamble method. Take it. The writer's intention is to show that anybody can master the art of speech making. That's one answer, which is good. Another option could be the writer's intention is to teach people how to be good public speakers. That's another answer. It's correct. So it says there's no need for a preamble here because it's a single sentence. Where the sentences are more, a preamble can be used. It also depends on you. So where the sentences are more, you could use a preamble or you could still use your direct sentence method, depending on how well you can do it. Question 2. In 4 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the 4 steps for making a good speech and the reason for each. So you're doing both. Summarize the 4 steps and the reason. So as you're given the 4 steps, make sure that that sentence also carries the reasons. Let's take a look. This is my preamble. It says, the 4 steps for making a good speech are, that's my preamble. Now, because this is number 2, and if I were to answer this question, I'll put number 2 here. I'll put my number 2 there, and then A, B, C, D. It's well arranged. So you're not expected to write number 2 and then 1, 2, 3, 4. It's best to use either the Roman numerals, but when you're not sure, use your alphabets. So this is question 2, number 2, A, B, C, D. That goes. And the preamble should link to the sentence. There should be a link between the sentence that you're writing after the preamble and the preamble itself. I have a colon here, okay? So this shows that the sentence is a part of my preamble, and it must end with a full stop. Your examiner would award marks based on your ability to identify the key points. So it says, the 4 steps for making a good speech are, A, getting sufficient information. That is 1 step. So one can speak confidently. That is the reason. We are doing 2 things. B, not rushing into making a speech. That is 1 step. So that he can overcome anxiety. That is the reason. C, introducing humor to ease tension. Introducing humor is a step. Reason to ease tension. That is another full stop. D, look at friendly faces occasionally. That is a step in order to feel at ease. This is 30 marks. You should take note of this. So like I said earlier, number 1 is number 1. You write your number 1 there. Number 2, because you are using a preamble method, even in direct sentences, 2, A, B, C, D. Please do not write 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And make sure your semicolon is there. That is for the preamble method. If it's a direct method, you say, get sufficient, the speaker should get sufficient information so that one can speak confidently. That's direct method. The speaker should not rush into making a speech so that he can overcome anxiety. The speaker should introduce humor to ease tension. That's direct sentence method. The speaker should look at friendly faces occasionally in order to feel at ease. That is a direct sentence method, but here it's broken down. So you should take note of these, and then the full stop at the end and the numbering as well. Take note of that. We'll move on to comprehension. Comprehension carries 20 marks, and you are marked based on good construction of sentences with your full stops at the end, making sure the sentences make sense. Do not write complex sentences or compound complex sentences when you are answering a comprehension question. So it doesn't look like you've lifted mindlessly. Remember, keywords, paraphrasing also comes to play in comprehension as well. Now let's take a look. The passage. It seemed that Joe had just about had it with his wife of 3 years. He no longer thought her attractive or interesting. He considered her a poor housekeeper who was overweight, someone he no longer wanted to live with. Joe was so upset that he finally decided on a divorce. Before he served her the papers, he made an appointment with a psychologist for the specific purpose of finding out how to make life as difficult as possible for his wife. The psychologist listened to Joe's story and then gave an advice. Well, Joe, I think I've got the perfect solution for you. From tonight, when you get home, I want you to start treating your wife as if she were a goddess. That's right, a goddess. I want you to change your attitude towards her completely. Start doing everything in your power to please her. Listen intently to her when she talks about her problems. Help around the house. Take her out to dinner on weekends. I want you to pretend that she is a goddess. Then after 2 months of this wonderful behavior, just pack your bags and leave her. That should get to her. Joe thought it was a tremendous idea. That night, he started treating his wife as if she were a goddess. He couldn't wait to do things for her. He brought her breakfast in bed and had flowers delivered to her for no apparent reason. They read books to each other at night, and Joe listened to her as never before. It was incredible what Joe was doing for his wife. He kept it up for 2 full months. After the allotted time, the psychologist gave Joe a call at home. Joe, he asked, how is it going? Did you file for a divorce? Are you a happy bachelor once again? Divorce? Asked Joe in surprise. You must be kidding. I'm married to a goddess. I've never been happier in my life. I'll never leave my wife in a million years. In fact, I'm discovering new wonderful things about her every single day. Divorce? Not on my life. The psychologist hung up, wearing a knowing smile. Let's look at the questions. Number 1 says, why did Joe consult the psychologist? Your answer should be written in proper grammar, correct English grammar. It says, Joe consulted the psychologist to find the best way to make his wife unhappy. Now, if you write, to find out the best way to make his wife unhappy, your sentence has no subject. Your answer has no subject. Take note. So that's why you go, Joe consulted the psychologist too. Because you can't answer the question to find out the best way to make his wife unhappy. That will not count. Okay? A ring will be drawn, no subject, and you'll be marked, you'll be penalized. So it's best to take note. This is the subject, and there is a full stop at the end there. The next question. What did Joe think he would achieve after following the psychologist's advice? He believed that he would make the divorce painful to his wife. So there is a subject there. He believed he would make the divorce painful to his wife. That's the answer to the question. And there is a full stop at the end. So don't write, he would make the divorce painful to his wife, or to make the divorce painful to his wife. Please do not start your answers with to. Use a subject. Question 3. What is ironical about Joe's answer to the psychologist's question at the end of the passage? Remember, an irony is stating the opposite. So you must understand what that word means to be able to answer this question. So what is ironical about Joe's answer to the psychologist's question at the end of the passage? You've been given a guide, end. That is towards the tail end of the passage. What was ironical about Joe's response? It says, what was ironical about Joe's response was that Joe, who no longer wanted to live with his wife, now wants to live with her forever. Remember where Joe said, divorce, not on my life will I file for divorce. That was the ironical response here. Number 4, from the passage, what was really wrong in Joe's marriage? So here you're expected to deduce the question, and it's implied that there was something wrong. So you're expected to deduce from what has been stated. And it says, what was really wrong in Joe's marriage? It says here, what had been wrong with Joe's marriage was that he wasn't endearing himself to his wife. You could say he was not close to his wife, or he didn't bond with his wife, or there was no bond between himself and his wife, or he was not close to his wife. Just in case endearing seems big for you, you could say Joe was not close to his wife. Take note. Question 5. It was a tremendous idea. Now, this line has been given to you. What grammatical name is given to the expression? What is the function in this sentence? Now, when you are asked, go to the passage and then look at how this group of words has been used in the passage. It's important to go. When you're told grammatical name, you are either told to identify whether or not it's a phrase or a clause, which is the first thing you should know. Now, a clause would have what? A finite verb. A phrase would not have a finite verb. Take note. And then you should know whether or not it's a noun clause or a noun clause or an adjective clause or an adverb clause. That's for clauses. Check whether or not it's a preposition phrase, adjective phrase, adverb phrase, verb phrase, or noun phrase as well. So one clue, there's no finite verb in a phrase. And for a noun clause, there's a finite verb. So you should check that as well first. Now let's look at this. Tremendous and was shows me that it's a verb. Was is there. So this is a clause on its own already. I've sorted that out. Was is in this expression. That tells me that this is a clause. Now what kind of clause is this? Noun clause. Why is it a noun clause? There is no relative pronoun to tell me that this expression, there's no relative pronoun in this expression to tell me it's an adjective clause. So because there's no relative pronoun, such as who, what, or such as who, which, whom, or that, because these relative pronouns are not there in this case, I have an idea that this should be a noun clause. Also, it's not an adverb of time telling me when. It's not an adverb of phrase telling me, it's not an adverb of place telling me where. And it's not an adverb of manner telling me how. So since it's not telling me these things, I need to go back to look at it. It was a tremendous idea. Now, this is a noun clause, and it's an object of the verb taught because it comes after the verb. It's an object. If it comes before the verb, it's a subject of the verb. That's for noun clause. If it comes after the verb, it's an object of the verb. If it comes after a preposition, it's an object of the preposition. I've given you a clue, so that's how to go about it in this case. Number 6, you'll be told to identify the figures of speech. Remember, 5 is grammatical name and function. That carries, grammatical name for identifying it carries 1 mark. Function carries 2 marks. Take note. And grammatical name and function, your examiner, if you get the grammatical name and you miss the function, you might be penalized. So it's very important to get the grammatical name and the function. Don't get marks for the grammatical name and then leave out the function, because you will lose out 3 marks completely. Now let's look at this. I would never leave my wife in a million years. Million years, some sort of exaggeration. So this tells me that this is an hyperbole in this case. Okay, I would never leave my wife in a million years. They are not going to live for millions of years anyway, so it's an hyperbole. Very important. Number 7, what do you think? Okay, why do you think the psychologist wore a knowing smile? Now let's look at this. The psychologist wore a knowing smile because he knew the advice would produce a positive result. Don't go writing because he knew the advice will produce a positive result. You can't start with because at this stage. You're writing SSCE. So you're not expected to start a sentence with because. Take note. So the psychologist wore a knowing smile because he knew the advice would produce a positive result with your full stop, and then you've got your marks. Now, this is also there. You'll be told most of the time, for each of the following words, find a suitable word or phrase that can be used to replace the one used in the passage. All these words were underlined in the passage. Something you must know is very important. Now, this is very tricky. The word must fit the context in which it's used in the passage. You might know attractive to mean maybe beautiful, or maybe handsome, or maybe good looking. But if it does not fit the context of that passage, you will be penalized. That's very tricky. So when you're identifying words that fit the passage in this type of questions, make sure you choose the word and then try to read that paragraph or the lines to be sure. And then look at the whole passage as a whole. Now, this passage is talking about something that has to do with a husband and wife that had problems in their marriage. So when you're looking at the word attractive, make sure it's something that goes in line with that passage. So the context will determine the meaning. Remember, synonyms depend on the context in which words are used. Another thing you should note, when you write attractive and you give 2 meanings, if one of the meaning is correct and the other doesn't fit in the context, your examiner will mark you wrong. So it's better to choose the one that you feel suits the context in which it is used in that passage. That's one thing you should know. Also, in this case, you are allowed to use phrasal verbs. So because you are allowed to use phrasal verbs, be very careful. Mind the kind of phrasal verb that you use in this case, because that phrasal verb should be appropriate to the passage. So we have attractive, upset, solution, wonderful, apparent, and allotted. Now let's look at attractive. What does it mean? Attractive, beautiful, appealing, lovely, charming. Any of these words written. Beautiful because you're looking at Joe's wife. Okay, she was no longer attractive. So because she was no longer attractive, you can't use handsome here. So it's beautiful, appealing, lovely, and charming. Either of these words is best to use one. Suits the passage. So don't go doing guesswork and then give 3 synonyms and then one doesn't fit. And because one does not fit, you're penalized. The second, upset, agitated, worried, troubled, or perturbed. Any of these words would fit. Solution, answer, or remedy. You can't use cure there. It won't suit. Wonderful, remarkable, extraordinary, unusual. Apparent, evident, obvious, known, or clear. Allotted, fixed, specified, prescribed, slated, or given. So take note of the words you use here. So with this, we have come to the end of English paper 1, and I wish you all the best in paper 1 because it carries 100 marks. So take note of some of the things I have mentioned earlier. Remember, essay takes 50 marks, summary 30 marks, and comprehension 20 marks. I wish you all the best.